So imagine you're 130 years old. You've lived a life, highs, lows, and some pretty deep, I didn't see that coming moments. You finally get word that your favorite son, the one you thought was dead for 20 years, is actually the second in command of the most powerful nation on earth. That's where we find Jacob, or Israel as God called him in Genesis 46. He's packing his bags, and it's not just a weekend trip. He's moving the whole family business to Egypt. Jacob gets as far as Beersheba, basically the last stop before you hit the desert, and he stops to pray. Honestly, he was probably terrified. The last time his family went to Egypt during a famine, things got weird. Plus, he's leaving the land God promised him. But God shows up in a vision that night. He calls out, "Jacob, Jacob." And Jacob answers, "Here I am." I love that. No matter how old Jacob got, he was still listening. God basically tells him, "Don't be afraid to go down there. I'm going with you. I'm going to make your family huge, and I'll personally make sure you come back home one day." Isn't it just like God to give you a green light right when you're hovering your foot over the brake? So, they head out. Picture the scene. Wagons provided by Pharaoh himself, the ancient equivalent of a fleet of private jets. Kids everywhere. Thousands of sheep and a lot of noisy goats. Jacob's sons are loading up their wives and children, and there was probably at least one, "Are we there yet?" every 5 miles. Now, the Bible takes a minute here to list everyone. It's like a massive family tree printout. You've got the kids of Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, and Bilhah. If you count them all up, the sons, the grandsons, and the one daughter mentioned, Dinah, you get 70 people. It's a specific number to show that while they started as a small family, they were already becoming a nation. It's easy to skim the names, but remember, every one of those names was a person who was part of God's bigger plan, even the ones with the hard-to-pronounce names. Jacob sends his son Judah ahead to get directions to a place called Goshen. As they pull in, Joseph hops in his chariot and races out to meet them. Can you imagine that moment? Joseph sees his dad for the first time in 2 decades. He jumps out light, throws his arms around his father's neck, and just weeps for a long time. Jacob looks at him and says, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know you are still alive." Typical dramatic grandpa move, right? But you can't blame the guy. Once the hugging is over, Joseph, who is a very savvy politician by now, gets down to business. He tells his brothers, "Look, when Pharaoh asks what you do for a living, tell him you've been shepherds since you were kids, just like our ancestors." Here's the catch. The Egyptians actually hated shepherds. It was an abomination to them. Why would Joseph tell them to say that? Because he wanted them to live in the land of Goshen. By being the shepherd family, they got the best grazing land and stayed somewhat separated from the Egyptian culture. Joseph was protecting their faith and their family business while keeping them close to him. Genesis 46 is a story about God's GPS. Jacob was old and tired, but God wasn't done with him. It reminds us that it's okay to be nervous about change, as long as you take it to God. God keeps his receipts. He promised Abraham a nation, and here are the 70 people who would start it. Family reunions are God's specialty. Restoration is always on his heart. So the next time you feel like you're heading into an Egypt, a place of the unknown, just remember that God usually goes there ahead of you to set the table.